Good morning and thank you all for joining us. It's a new dawn again. It is Moneyline with Nancy on Africa Independent Television. I am Nancy Naji. This is where we keep you up to the minute with business, finance, investment, market, and economic information. So we're doing it again at today. We will get started with our business news in a bit. I'll also be taking you through the markets today, how we ended last week and how the markets are really shaping up today. What are investors expecting for markets in Nigeria? All the markets are keenly waiting for the Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee meeting that will begin tomorrow and end on Wednesday. What will the decision be, especially after the National Bureau of Statistics released inflation data for the month of April, indicating that inflation rose to 22.22% from 22.05% in March? Does that imply that the Apex Bank will increase rates again, since the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria in the March meeting indicated that it will do everything within its power to bring down inflation? But it seems it's losing that battle. And the central bank governor did say at the March MPC meeting, he gave us indication that the Apex Bank will continue to raise rates except when they see inflation data are trending down. So what are we going to see at the end of the meeting on Wednesday? Everyone is keeping their fingers crossed for that. Today we will be looking at expectations from the Tinubu government when he gets sworn in just a few days. There are a lot of economic challenges for the incoming government, for the president-elect. Of course, if you followed us on this show, during the elections, we broke down all, at least the four parties, I must say, the four parties, their manifestos, including the APC presidential candidate, who is now the president-elect. We broke it down for you. We'll be looking at those expectations. What should Nigerians be yearning for, at least in the next few days? What kind of actions should we see from the president-elect that will bring in some kind of confidence? Or that, is it confidence, or, okay, to make people to begin to look, oh, does it mean that this government is serious? Does it mean that this man is serious? So we'll be looking at that today on the show. My guest will be joining me shortly, but let's get started with the business news. Don't forget also to connect with us on all our socials. The handles are on the screen scrolling. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. You can go on YouTube at Moneyline with Nancy TV. Let's All right, welcome back to the program Moneyline with Nancy. It is my guest is joining me right now virtually from Lagos. He's Joachim MacEbong. He's the senior governance analyst at Stairs Insight. Hello, Joachim. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nancy. Thank you for having me.
How are you today? It's been a while. How are you doing?
Yes, it has. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Okay, let's get started. We'll be talking about expectations from the incoming government in just a few days. The president-elect will be sworn in. But before I go into that, let's quickly talk about one of the happenings today. The president-elect, I'm also aware, is expected at the Dangote refinery commissioning, along with the president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, and five other presidents from Africa. Do you think, Joachim, are you still there? Joachim, do you think,
Yes, I am.
yes, do you think that this is really a game changer for Nigeria's oil sector, bearing in mind that this is one sector that has been giving us so many challenges in the last few years?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Nancy. I think first of all, we need to recognize the scale of the achievement that Dangote has put together here. The refinery is a very large refinery and is perhaps the largest single train refinery in the world. And when it becomes operational, it will surely be a marvel of engineering. And because it's a very new refinery, it has all the latest technology and all of the things that you would expect from a refinery that is done in this day and age. I think that first of all, it will remove the stigma against Nigeria of being perhaps the only oil producing country that cannot refine its own oil within its borders. So that is the first thing that it that it is going to do. The other thing is that it will then move from that position of not being able to refine its products to also being able to export petroleum, particularly, I suspect, along the West African coast. And that is going to no doubt bring in much needed foreign exchange for the country. But regarding the petrol price in Nigeria itself, I don't think that it will have much of an impact. The reason is because the the factors that go into producing refined petrol are likely to be unchanged mostly, apart from the transportation costs, just because everything that has to do with petrol refining happens in dollars. And I think that when this refinery finally begins to produce petrol in a significant quantity, it is a reasonable expectation that the fuel subsidy is going to go. And because that is going to go, we will then have to pay more or less the full cost of petrol in the country, simply because that will also end the rampant smuggling across of our currently imported petrol to other countries that have higher petrol prices in Nigeria. But no doubt, this is a very big achievement, and it is something that I think is definitely worth a lot of the press that it is getting.
Mm. If we take a look at the press that it's getting, do you think that Dangote is somehow and seemingly being pressured to get this commissioned, especially by this administration? Because some analysts have also said that before this commission would have happened, or since it's happening today, that some sort of production would have been going on from there. What are your views about that? Perhaps it's a bit political to commission the refinery just a few days to the end of this administration. He wants to give the president that joy to be the one to commission it and let it be in his, in his books that when I was president, Dangote refinery came on stream.
Yes, I think that the timing says it all. Handover is a week away. And again, like you rightly said, if the refinery was already producing petrol by now, then there would have been more much more basis for a commission. But as it is now, this refinery is not going to be producing petrol for a little while to come. But yes, it is the timing is definitely political. And I think that when you also look at the various challenges that the refinery has had coming on stream, the various postponements with regard to its commencement of operation, I'm sure you will recall that many people were trying to brief and try to be adamant that the refinery will begin last year around September or so. But that has also been missed, so we are another 6 months plus down the road. But yes, definitely, it is something that has a political angle to it, and and that is definitely something that should also be mentioned, at the very least.
Now, since we're talking about, or let's now dovetail into the incoming government that will be sworn in just a few days from now. From Tinubu's manifesto, and I hope my team can bring back that card, because during the elections or during the campaigns, what we did on this show was to do in-depth research and get out the manifestos of at least the four top political parties, what the candidates as at that time, what they were saying on specific issues that border on even economy and some other socio-economic issues. And we talked about that of Tinubu. With him being inspected at the Dangote refinery, do you think at the Dangote refinery commissioning today, do you think that you see a sense of direction from the incoming president as to what he will do concerning crude oil? Because I also remember vividly that I don't think I saw anything around crude oil theft in that manifesto, which is, I think, 80 pages, if I can remember now. So what are your views about what Tinubu's presidency would look like when it comes to the oil sector?
Yes, that is another very important question. I think that one of the things in the manifesto that was mentioned over and over was the fact that the incoming administration, if elected at the time, were promising 10% GDP growth. Now, with the fact that he is about to be sworn in, a lot of the noise around and the chatter around the transition committee appears to indicate that they are still set on achieving that 10% growth. Now, they cannot get there without, first of all, getting Nigeria's crude oil production back to meeting its OPEC quota. Now, the current OPEC quota is 1.7 million barrels per day for Nigeria, and we are at around 1.1, 1.2 million barrels or so. And getting that oil production back above 1.7 million barrels per day is, I am sure, a central, will be a central focus for the administration in the short term in order to get Nigeria's growth back on track. Now, you cannot get there without addressing in a full and final way the issue of crude oil theft and all of the elements that go into that. For example, metering of Nigeria's crude oil production, installing those meters, dealing with the various elements along that chain, that are able to siphon fuel, the various collisions that go on in and around the pipelines, are all of those things that the incoming administration must fix in order to first get the crude oil production back above the OPEC quota, and then taking advantage of moderately high oil prices in order to, reap some of the benefits there while there are still benefits to be had. And I think that definitely, getting that oil theft under control, has to be a central focus if they want to deliver on that promise of 10% growth.
Tinubu in his manifesto, if we have that, guys, let's quickly put back that manifesto there. Okay, the director is saying not yet, but I know that Tinubu in his manifesto, when he was talking about the oil sector, he did say that he will stop all the fuel subsidies. He also did mention about oil production, increasing oil production to about 2.6 million barrels per day, I think for 2026, if I'm not mistaken. Joaquin, I see that you're smiling. I hope I got that right. So many numbers. You know what I'm talking about. We're in this business together. So a lot of numbers will be in your brain. He said 2.6 million barrels per day by 2027. Then I think about 4 million barrels per day by 2030. We've also mentioned here that oil theft was a bit silent in that document. Do you see Tinubu, when he's been sworn in a few days' time, saving Nigeria from the fuel subsidy, the almighty fuel subsidy that we've been talking about now for many years?
Yes, thank you, Nancy. And I think that the fuel subsidy is very much the elephant in the room. You may recall about 2 weeks ago, is it 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Edo State Governor, the Edo State Governor, Godwin Obaseki, said that Nigerian states may be unable to pay salaries as early as June if the fuel subsidy is not removed. So we know that the governors are against the continued fuel subsidy. We also know that not just Tinubu himself, but people around him have also said that they favor the removal of fuel subsidy. So I think that one of the first things that we should look out for in the first 100 days of the Tinubu administration should be a removal of fuel subsidy. If this is not possible, then I think that it will be a bit of a black mark on them, because it will be very interesting to see how long this train, can continue to carry on, simply because of all of the things that I have previously stated, and all of the realities that we know about Nigeria's current fiscal situation. As far as increasing crude oil production goes, that will need a lot of investment, a lot of outside investment, a lot of outside expertise, and bringing in that outside investment and expertise will surely be one of the benchmarks by which the incoming administration will be measured. But definitely in the first 100 days, we should expect to see the end of the fuel subsidy, not just because of the statements that the campaign has made already and the governor's position, but also the reality of the Dangote refinery coming on stream. Dangote is not going to sell petrol to Nigeria at 185 naira per liter. It's not, I don't think that's going to happen.
For all of this to even come to pass, as it were, do you think that the president-elect would have the confidence of Nigerians, the credibility, the popular support? Because this is not a very good time to be a Nigerian president. This is not a very good time because there are so many crises, multi-crises that are really facing us right now. The crisis of security is there. Many economic crises hitting hitting us left, right, and center. Where will I even begin? Is it the debt issue? Is it the inflation issue? Is it the fiscal crisis that we have? So many of them, joblessness, unemployment, inequality, malnutrition, so many things at this time. So this is not a good time to be a president. And President Buhari will be bequeathing an economy that is shaking to him. So I wonder the kind of crown that Tinubu will be wearing on May 29th. I don't envy them. But do you think that that credibility, okay, let me ask it this way. What actions do you think that the president-elect should take when sworn in that may give a hint of credibility and I'll bring some sort of confidence to say for Nigerians to say, oh, okay, this man seems to be serious. The kingmaker is now king. Whether we should begin to look his direction.
That's a fantastic question, Nancy. I wrote an article for Stairs that came out. That was about last week or so, highlighting some of these issues. Nigeria is actually in a polling crisis. I heard that first from a Financial Times columnist called Adam Tooze. So Tooze, a polling crisis. So basically, multiple crises at the same time. Nigeria has a fiscal crisis, a monetary policy crisis, a human capital crisis, and a security crisis all at the same time. And these various crises have multiple heads. So basically, you have a Hydra headed monster, that the incoming administration has to try to confront. And this is the worst year to be a Nigerian president that certainly I can think of. Perhaps the worst year since 1966. But this is the context in which the current president-elect is working into. Now, as far as credibility is concerned, I think the first signal of how of increasing that credibility is how he picks his cabinet. The cabinet is very important. If he picks a cabinet of mostly technocrats and empowers them, so it's two things. You cannot have a cabinet of technocrats and not empower them and not give them the political cover necessary to carry out these reforms. So it will be like basically telling a horse to run the length of a field while basically chaining one of its legs to like a weight and then the horse because you're unable to run fast. The cabinet and the positions those technocrats occupy will be a major signal with regard to how serious this administration is. The choice of the chief of staff is also a central choice with regard to how serious the administration is. The knowledge of the chief of staff, the credibility the chief of staff has with various stakeholders, the capability of the chief of staff to make the various deals necessary to ensure that the members of the cabinet can work together to basically achieve the lofty goals and untie the various issues, that Nigeria is currently plagued with at this moment. And I think that cabinet, the composition of the cabinet, the balance of the cabinet, the gender balance, the regional balance, the religious balance as well of the cabinet will all be central, and all of these things will come into the mix with regard to how credible the incoming administration is likely to be. And I think that these are all open questions that we will no doubt have the answers to in the coming weeks. By the time the list comes out and people are screened by the National Assembly and they begin to take their places, then we will see and then we will know how credible this current administration is. I think that we need to also understand that the first 100 days are very important with regard to how an administration does. You will recall that in 2015, the cabinet was not put in place until November. You will also recall that it was in June 2015 that the bans on the various items that were eligible for, I mean, that were no longer eligible for official forex from the CBN, were put in place. And Nigeria never really recovered from that. The Buhari administration never really recovered from that. It was downhill from there essentially. And I think that one way is definitely the cabinet and how the cabinet moves, and also the decision on the fuel subsidy. If those two go the way they should go, then perhaps there will be some uh, some room for optimism. But if they do not go the other way, so for example, if you have a cabinet full of people who did not do very well in their respective states as governors, for example, then that is definitely a bad sign, and may suggest that the renewed hope that was promised is not going to come after all.
Uh, President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu traveled a few days ago and said he wanted to go and meet investors. Joachim, I hope you remember that. What do you
Yes, yes.
think? What do you think? And I don't know if they've come back to us with the people he met. I've not seen anything about that. I might be incorrect, but I haven't seen even anything in the media as to if he was successful and the foreign investors he met. But what I'm driving at really now is what will be the implication of a Tinubu's administration supposedly, seemingly that has his oppositions, both of them are in courts. They are in courts right now. We also talked about the confidence and credibility in his administration when he's sworn in. What do you think that coloration will look like for foreign investors? Foreign investment that does not, one word it hates is uncertainty. How do you think that he's going to fix that? Because foreign investors might just say, let's sit on the fence and see what these Nigerian people are going to do, or how the situation will pan out in Nigeria.
Yes, yes, Nancy, you are absolutely correct. And the reality is that for as long as those court cases are still going through the process, the judicial process, there will always be that uncertainty until perhaps I think the end of October, early November, when after this presidential election petition tribunal gives its ruling, then if people are not still happy, they then proceed to the Supreme Court. And I think that the entire window for that is about 180 days.
Yeah.
And that ends around the end of October, beginning of November, that kind of time. And I think that that uncertainty is also something that is going to play on the mind of those investors. However, the truth of the matter is that the incoming administration cannot also afford to wait to sit on its hands during that process. There are still signals it can give to investors that will show that there are reforms that are, one, already done reforms, and also reforms that are on the way as well. And I think that before those investors come in, they will need certain guarantees. And one of the guarantees that I think they are going to need is just a lot of clarity on the monetary policy, the foreign exchange policy position of the CBN. Now, when people invest money, they would obviously like to
Take it
see
out.
those returns and be able to take those returns out of the country. Now, it doesn't matter who the president is in a way. If an investor cannot take out money legitimately made in Nigeria back to his or her home base, they are not going to invest. It doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says. They need those assurances, and the trajectory of foreign exchange policy has to be very clear going forward in order to get those investors that we have heard so much about. Now, unless that changes, I think that in some ways the the uh, the the process of the election petition tribunal, while it is very important, while it is very important, the trajectory of foreign exchange policy is even more so.
Joachim, I don't even know what questions again to ask because there are many questions coming to to me, especially as
We can
regarding.
actually do this. We can actually do this all day long.
I'm telling you,
Actually,
I'm telling you,
there are
man.
so many things to talk
So
about. Yeah,
many things to talk about, and they are really
yeah.
hitting me now, left, right, and center. But I think even as we end the show, the question to ask is, where will Tinubu get the money? And this is a man that has promised us, he did promise us in his manifesto that he will get the money. He has promised, oh, student loans and all of that. And this is a country right now that is in the middle of a fiscal crisis, as it were. Is it fiscal crisis? Though the government will say, okay, no, it's a revenue problem they have. But a lot of people will say, you have a revenue problem, you have a spending problem, you have what else again? Revenue, spending. I think there's a third one. So where? Oh,
So,
Joaquin, just take it off
so
me
I
right
think
now.
yeah. So I think that there are three issues. Nigeria does indeed have a revenue problem, but we also have an expenditure problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the nature of the problem is this: the money we do have, what do we spend it for? That's the question. So it's not just an expenditure problem or that you don't have enough money. Yes, you don't have enough money and you could do with more money. Actually, Nigeria's government spending as a percentage of GDP is on the low side, compared to other countries. But the problem and what we continue to run into, the issue that we continue to run into is that the money that Nigeria does indeed spend, we don't spend that well at all. So a lot of money has gone into fuel subsidies, for example. A lot of money is also going into a bloated personnel cost, right? That takes up a large chunk of Nigeria's non-debt recurrent expenditure. Now, fixing those two planks will free up, additional resources to use in other areas like delivering healthcare and delivering education, particularly at primary school level, because 25% of Nigerian children aged 7 to 14 do not have foundational reading and numeracy skills. That is one of the planks of Nigeria's human capital crisis. So I think that yes, you need to look for more revenue, but also the money that we do spend needs to be spent much better. Now, one way out of the revenue problem is, of course, to bring in foreign investment into the country. Now, when you bring in foreign investment and then you are able to tax that in a reasonable and a sensible way, then you are then able to raise government revenues because there will be employment generated, and from that employment, you then apply a modest and reasonable tax, and then as more people are getting into work, you can then increase your tax revenue. And the truth of the matter is that the only real way out for Nigeria is investment-led growth. The time of national resource-led growth, may be running into a lot of issues now because of the fact that a lot of the oil boom has gone, and is unlikely to come back because of the fact that there's a global push toward cleaner energies, and also some demographic changes in the Western world. Will also impact how people spend money on some of these raw materials.
Okay.
However, by bringing in this
Okay.
foreign investment and getting people to work, then we
Okay.
can then the revenue position can then.
Okay. Joachim, just like you said, we can go on and on about this topic. We can really stick here for the whole day and we will not have any, we will not run out of ideas, we will not run out of questions. What I've always said, especially when I moderate these high level panel sessions, among governors and all of that. Everyone knows the problem. We also know the solutions, but how do we now get to that's where the wahala is. Thank you.
Precisely.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joachim. We'll talk soon. Let's see how the next few days will look like, and definitely we'll talk again soon. So have a great week, Joachim.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, I've been speaking with Joachim MacEbong. He's the senior governance analyst at STERS Insight. We've been looking at expectations from the incoming government. Please send your comments, your opinions to our social media handles on Facebook, on Twitter, and other social media handles. Just before we go, we have pictures from the location where the refinery will be commissioned. So those are pictures that we have right there for you. So Dangote Refinery would be inaugurated today. Dignitaries are arriving for the inauguration of 650,000 barrels per day. Dangote refinery. I did mention at the beginning of the program that we're seeing this just a few days to the end of this administration. Will this indeed be a game changer? The next few months will tell us so. Perhaps after this, we'll now begin to see activities from the refinery. Will this make us really self-sufficient? A lot of analysts have said, would it really impact price? But we'll continue to look at this. President Buhari, we're also being told that President Buhari has arrived at the venue. So look out today. We'll get to see what happens. All right. That's it. That's the end of the program today. I hope we kept you company. If we did not, at least we try small. Join us tomorrow, on this channel. I'll be here again with another guest, another topic. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. I am Nancy Naji. Bye now.